Months of ongoing protests in Gaza have largely been ignored by the mainstream press. Thousands of Palestinians continue to take to the streets in weekly demonstrations against Israeli policy on the Gaza Strip. Now, disenchanted youth, they see no better future for them as hundreds of Palestinians have been shot dead since these protests began. For more perspective on this, let's talk to former UK MP George Galloway. George, please summarize for us why Palestinian youth have turned out for these weekly protests that began some 18 months ago.
Well, the Gaza Strip was physically occupied by Israel for decades and has been under siege now, a total blockade for over a decade. If ever you were looking for a place in the world where humanity's whole past, present and future is benighted, it is the people in the Gaza Strip. Only the very oldest resident can remember a time when they lived freely like normal human beings. And this blockade is total. Israel controls the water, controls the electricity, controls who can come in, very few, go out, even fewer, and controls effectively the economy such as it is in a strip with 2 million people, which is only about 22 miles long and only a few miles wide. Nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And that's before you factor in regular savage invasion, incursion, bombardment and so on. I've got to tell you, having been there many times, Manila, it is the closest place to hell on earth on the planet today.
George, what of the argument that these are all Hamas-backed rallies, that they're inorganic, those saying Hamas are inciting instability?
Well, Hamas are the majority political trend inside Gaza. It's not a trend I particularly like or would vote for, but the people there did vote for them, and that was the proximate cause of the blockade, of the siege, a refusal to accept the election result, which nobody disputes as to fairness, which Hamas won. The people in Gaza are close to Egypt. There's a strong Islamic current there, and Hamas politically represent that current. But there are lots of others there. There are leftists, there are supporters of the mainstream Fatah, the Yasser Arafat faction, but Hamas are undoubtedly the majority. But absolutely everyone in Gaza, left, right and center, Muslim, and there are even still some Christians there, are absolutely opposed to this blockade. How could they not be? It's their children's lives, indeed their own lives, and now their children's lives that have been basically choked to the point of meaninglessness.
And George, as you said, you've been there several times. Can you describe for us in what ways this Israeli blockade has impacted the residents of Gaza?
Well, I can sum it up this way. 80% of the children in Gaza are malnourished or undernourished. 80% of the people are unemployed, and 80% of them are living on $1.50 a day or even less. So 80% is the magic number there. It is a place where it's baking hot in summer and you can't get any air conditioning of any kind, any refrigeration of any kind, any fans even of any kind, because the electricity is on much less often than it is off. And it's a place that's freezing cold in winter, and ditto for the heating. You can't get school books. If you're sick, you can't get out to get treatment. Doctors and others can't get in to treat you. And when there are major traumas like bombardments, incursions, invasions, the hospitals are operating literally in candlelight. It is utterly hellish in Gaza. And what is totally remarkable is that the people are as disciplined and as relatively peaceful as they are, because there are many people in the world who long before this would have chosen to die on the fence trying to climb it than to go on living in hell on earth.
And George, we have a soundbite from the UN rapporteur as to how he describes how Western nations have essentially done nothing to prevent Israel's actions.
Israel has rightly assessed that the international community, particularly the Western industrial nations, has lacked the political will to end this impunity. As a result, it has rarely faced meaningful consequences for its truculent behavior.
Your response to that, George?
Well, it's a fact. There's one law for Israel and one law for everyone else in the world. It would take too long for me to analyze and try to explain that. But Israel's blockade is entirely illegal. It is starving the people of all the necessities of life. And as David Cameron, the former British Prime Minister, no friend of revolution anywhere in the world, said, he said in Parliament, I saw his lips move, that Gaza is the biggest concentration camp in the world. It's an open-air prison camp in which 2 million people live and die, but really they've already been dead for a very long time.
Just chilling remarks and even more chilling images if you take a look. George Galloway, always appreciate your insight on this. Thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.